Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 17th episode of the Cultured Pull List. In today's episode, we're going to be covering The Flash Rebirth by Geoff Johns. So let's just get into it. All right. Hello, everyone. We are your hosts, Mike and Luke.
Yeah.
And this is the first week of our, month of Flash, leading up to the Flash movie coming out in about a month. So we're starting with Flash Rebirth, which, not to be mistaken for Rebirth, which was the reboot in 2016 or something.
Yeah, 2016.
Yeah. So this was 7 years prior. And is written by Geoff Johns, who was writing a lot of stuff at the time, which, he's kind of become a controversial figure since, his role in the whole Justice League fiasco. Just he ended up being let go from DC films and everything. But regardless of that, he is a very good comic writer, especially when it comes to Flash and Green Lantern, I think. So let's get into it. This is one of my favorite Flash stories, I think, and it's kind of iconic, but we'll talk about it later. So first off, The Flash Rebirth, we already said, written by Geoff Johns, art by Ethan Van Sciver. Colorists are Brian Miller from Hi-Fi and Alex Sinclair. The letterer is Rob Leigh, and this is a 6-issue limited series. It ran from April 2009 to February 2010. Before we get into the actual comic, a couple things about the backstory, things you should probably know. So first off, Barry Allen had died during the Crisis on Infinite Earths, big crossover event in 85, and he was gone out of the comics pretty much until 2008, or I think it was Final Crisis or something. Some crossover event. He just sort of appeared out of nowhere, and then eventually he just kind of stayed. It turns out he was hanging out he was lost to the Speed Force the whole time and didn't really have any memories of himself while he was in the Speed Force. Also, something you should know is Reverse Flash was killed by Barry, but before that whole Crisis on an Infinite Earths event, when he tried to kill, he had already killed Iris, and Barry had found another love, and he was gonna get married to her, and then Reverse Flash almost killed her, so Barry snapped his neck, and there was this whole big thing where he was put on trial for it and everything. Other than that, there are a few other people trapped in the Speed Force: Savitar, Max Mercury, and Johnny Quick, which we'll see in this book. So this book opens with a couple forensic scientists in the Central City Crime Lab. They're actually talking about some DNA evidence and how it doesn't match a suspect that's on trial currently. And one of the scientists is just trying to get him to make the DNA match, basically. And then while they're in the middle of this conversation, somebody enters the lab. It's not shown who it is, but they have this lightning rod staff, and whoever this person is murders the two forensic scientists and then starts taking all these chemicals in the lab. Seems like specific ones that they were looking for, and just starts collecting all of them. And then we see a couple cops rush in because they heard the murders, and this person pours all of these chemicals on himself, which seems like he's kind of trying to recreate a similar occurrence to what happened to Barry and Wally and everybody. And see all this weird yellow then red lightning show up, and this messed up face, and the narration is coming from the murderer here, and it says I brought you back, Barry. Then we cut to there's a bunch of celebrations going on because Barry Allen, the Flash, is back. There's this big parade going on in Central City. It shows all these villains kind of reacting to the news. This guy's Abracadabra, I believe.
Yeah.
And a few other, the Alchemist, I think, and just a few other people. And then we see all these parties being set up. First off, we see one being set up by the Justice Society, and Jay Garrick is kind of just reminiscing about how when Barry became the Flash and showed up, he kind of helped him become a better Flash, a better superhero. And then we see the Titans setting up their own party, and Wally is just kind of messing with his kids who were fighting. And they both have a connection to the Speed Force, but they don't have speed. His daughter Irie has like phasing abilities, and his son Jai, I'm not really sure which it is, but he has like super strength, I believe. And then we cut to the Teen Titans, which is a separate team from the Titans.
Yes, it's a different thing.
Yeah. And they're setting up a party too, but this is Bart, formerly Impulse, now Kid Flash, who is Barry's grandson, if you don't know, from the future. And he seems kind of upset that they're making such a fuss about Barry showing up. And like, as far as he's concerned, he says like Wally's the Flash. And then he says, why is Barry the only one that escapes the Speed Force? And because his mentor was Max Mercury in the future,
right?
And he got lost to the Speed Force, so he seems upset that Max, isn't out as well. And then we cut to Iris West. I don't think she and Barry are married at this point, but anyway, yeah. And also, it's not clear throughout this book like how long Barry has been gone in continuity, because in the comics he had been gone for 23 years. In this, it seems like probably like 10-ish years or so, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
It's not really clear though. And Iris, I believe she's talking to Joan, Jay's wife. And then it says a home of Iris West Allen, so I guess they are married. I don't know. But she gets a phone call. It's not clear who it is, but the person on the other end of the line says that, oh, no, actually we do know. He says it's Captain Fry of the police department, and he knows that Barry's back. There's been a murder, and they need Barry's help.
Right.
Then we go to Barry, who is at the Flash Museum, and he meets Hal Jordan, aka Green Lantern, there, and they just start talking and reminiscing. But then Barry starts talking about how, like, he wasn't supposed to escape the Speed Force. He can feel it trying to pull him back in. Hal tries to reassure him because he had just recently returned from being the Spectre, I believe, because he was possessed by Parallax, then, quote unquote died, but then he became the Spectre, and now he's back as Green Lantern. So he's trying to encourage Barry and is like, no, you escaped death. You're fine. You should just be enjoying being back and getting a new lease on life. But Barry doesn't seem so convinced. Then we cut to Fallville, Iowa, which is Barry's the town Barry was born in, I think.
Yeah.
And which I didn't realize. I thought he was born in Central City, but we see these two kids in this farm field, and there's this long like burn streak, and they check it out. And at the very end is the remains of Black Flash, who is basically the embodiment of like the Grim Reaper in the Speed Force. So that's definitely an interesting development. So then we go back to Barry and Hal at the museum. Hal's talking about all the parties being thrown for Barry, and like saying you're going to be pretty busy today. And Barry basically says like he's not going to make any of the parties or the parade, and he's just gonna he's not content to sit still. He feels like he needs to go around and be the Flash, be like just keep running. And as he runs, as he's going around, he kind of has a flashback to when his mother was murdered. We see him running into the apartment. He sees his mom's body, but the cops drag him away, and we see his father being put in handcuffs. I don't remember where it was mentioned in this book, but his father did die before he was able to clear his name, so that's kind of important. So Barry's remembering all this, and then he just keeps running. He's reaching a super high speed, and then we see like a hand start to come out of his chest, and Savitar basically just materializes out of him. Mm-hmm. And at this point, Barry does know who Savitar is, even though he never faced him before. So he starts chasing him because he knows he's a villain, and he catches up to him and grabs his shoulder. But for whatever reason, this causes Savitar to just kind of shrivel and like die, just kind of shrivel into a skeleton. Mm-hmm. And when this happens, Wally and the other speedsters start just kind of having like this like attack, and it's not really sure like clear what it is, but it seems related to the Speed Force. Mm-hmm. So then in the next issue, we see Gorilla City, and we see like these cave paintings of basically the Flash family as well as Savitar being painted. It's not really clear if that's like how that's going to be, relevant later. Mm-hmm. And then we cut to this woman who is a high priestess of Savitar's cult, and she's basically trying to summon Savitar back. But it seems like the same moment that Savitar dies. Like she sees Savitar, but then she sees him die, and at that same moment, there's like this big electric storm, and a bunch of the cult members die, but she survives. And then we cut back to Savitar and his body, and his mask wasn't affected, only his flesh was. So Barry takes that to mean that he was disintegrated from the inside out. Then Hal shows up, and Barry tells him what happened, that for some reason, when he reached a high enough velocity, Savitar basically used him as a doorway to escape the Speed Force, but he's not really sure yet why touching him disintegrated him. Mm-hmm. And Hal kind of tries to keep Barry there, but Barry just tells him to contain the scene, and then he runs off. And as he's running, we see again glimpses of what happened, when his mom died and everything. But then we see a flashback to him in the crime lab at his work, and then we see him in the courtroom giving a statement, basically, which damns this guy, and like, because he's a murderer or something. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was for murder. So after the case and everything, he goes out on the courthouse steps, and this is where he meets Iris for the first time. And she comes up to him and wants to interview him, not about the case though, like about his mom and like that whole case, and he doesn't appreciate that. Oh yeah, also this is kind of important later, but he's wearing a bow tie that his coworker gave him because he didn't have a tie to wear to court. Right. So Iris offers to take him out to coffee to apologize for prying, into his personal life, basically. And she says she can use a friend in the crime lab, and he says he doesn't drink coffee. So then she offers dinner, and they agree to meet at like 9:00 for dinner. Then we see him back in the crime lab, and through a conversation that his coworkers have, we learn that he like rarely leaves work on time. Like he's there for hours because he's working on his mom's case. Yeah. And we see he almost misses his date with Iris. Like it's 9:00 right now. So he's like, oh no, I'm going to be late. And then we cut back to the present day. He goes back home, and we see that Captain Fry is talking with Iris. He quickly changes out of his Flash suit and comes out as Barry, and they basically tell Captain Fry, like, he knows he's back, but he doesn't know he's the Flash and everything. So they tell Captain Fry that he'd been in witness protection all these years, I guess. And Captain Fry, he's there to talk to Barry about the murders in the crime lab. The murder of those two forensic scientists, and he needs Barry's help because Barry was one of the best when he was on the force and everything. And Barry kind of reluctantly agrees, I guess, but like he's not really sure about it. And he has this kind of moment of like kind of going through all of his failures in his head. And he says something along the lines of like, I was never a saint. I was just a guy chasing justice, and he feels like he doesn't need to be here. He doesn't have any like loose ends or any, like he feels like he's not, there's no reason for him to be back out of the Speed Force, and he doesn't really feel like he deserves to be lauded with this huge celebration for his return and everything. But then he gets called by Wally. Wally found the body of the Black Flash, and through their like conversation, we do cut to all the members of like the Flash family and like them kind of being tested, and everyone's trying to figure out what happened to them, why they had like a Speed Force attack, basically. So Wally and Barry are at the site of the Black Flash's dead body. They're trying to figure out like what that means, and then all of a sudden, this the High Priestess, Savitar's High Priestess, shows up. Her name is Christina Alexandrova, and she starts attacking them, saying she's stronger than normal because I guess she absorbed the powers of all the cultists that died. And they start fighting. She gets a couple good licks in, but eventually Barry ends up like blocking one of her attacks, and that causes her to disintegrate just like Savitar did.
Mm-hmm.
But right after this happens, Barry starts to like kind of get like engulfed by this energy, this lightning, this red lightning, and it transforms him into the Black Flash, which is pretty surprising to Wally. And then the next issue, I'm not really sure what this scene is supposed to be per se, but it seems like this is Abracadabra's lair.
Right.
And somebody is confronting Abracadabra off like out of frame, and seems like they kill Abracadabra. He's the figure said, "I warned you, magician, there isn't room in this century for the both of us," and seemingly kills Abracadabra. So then we go to Jessie Quick, aka Liberty Bell, and she's looking at a statue of her parents and just kind of, I don't know, she's going through her own like moral crisis, I guess, because I don't know, it's not really that important, I don't think, besides the fact that she took her mom's moniker of Liberty Bell, even though she felt like she was more close to her dad.
Right.
And her boyfriend / husband, Our Man, is there. I'm not really sure if they're married at this point. And it's trying to comfort her, and then all of a sudden, like, there's this big flash of lightning, which destroys the two statues of her parents, and this like rift opens up, and she sees her father, and her father says, "My daughter, Barry, please, whatever you do, don't." And then like it kind of shorts out, and then we see her hurt my daughter, and then tells Jessie I love her, and Jessie is calling out for her father, but then the rift closes, and that's the last we see of him for now. So then we cut to Barry, who is being aided by the Justice League, who have built this containment chamber for him. Seems like he doesn't really have control of the energy that's engulfing him, and at one point he mentions that like it's taking a lot of energy to basically keep him out of the Speed Force, to keep him there. And he asks Wally to like leave, to stay away from him, but Wally doesn't leave. Then Jay shows up and explains that they're basically building this machine around him that's going to like basically absorb his energy and sever his tie to the Speed Force. They're obviously doing this to save him, and also so he can't hurt anybody else. Then Bart shows up and asks like if Max Mercury, because he like sensed something in the Speed Force and thought that it meant Max Mercury was back, but it was just what's going on with Barry. Then Hal brings Iris there, and she basically tells him like you have to stop like running around like a spaz, like just like take some time to spend some time with your friends and family. You don't need to keep doing this. And then we go back to their dinner date years before, and he was late, which is kind of a theme with Barry Allen. Even though he's like the fastest man alive, he's always late for everything. And Iris brought him a gift, which ends up being a red bow tie. which is kind of seems like it's suggesting he got his inspiration for his Flash suit from like her giving him a red tie. But then we cut back to the present, and Barry seems to have like this surge of whatever energy is corrupting him, and it seems like it's getting worse. And he says, "Run!" And at that point, Hal, because I'm pretty sure he breaks out of his containment, and Hal ends up putting him, in a construct containment, and he and the rest of the flying Justice League members start to fly Barry away, but then Barry decides to phase out of the construct, and he's going to go back into the Speed Force. Feels like that's the only option to save everyone from himself, basically. But as he's running, Superman runs after him, and there's like this moment where they're running at the same speed, and Superman's trying to convince Barry not to run back into the Speed Force and to like stay and try and find a cure, basically. And as Barry's running, the corrupting like red lightning and like starts to go away, and he's back to his regular self. And as he's running, like at some point, he runs faster than Superman, like much faster. He just leaves him in the dust. And I'm pretty sure in this scene, Superman mentions the few times in the comics that they've raced. And Superman said, like, I've raced you before, Barry. I have even won some of those races. And Barry says, those were for charity, Clark. And then he just, he runs out of there, just leaving Superman in the dust. And we see some more flashbacks, like stuff like his trial and like a few other things, Wally getting his powers, all this stuff. And he keeps running, and he actually enters the Speed Force like he planned, but he sees Johnny Quick and Max Mercury there, which he did not plan. And they seem to be like, you can see they're trapped there. They're kind of like engulfed by the Speed Force, seemingly. And then we see basically what Jesse Quick saw when she saw her father in that rift, except he mentions this formula, which I guess is a formula he used to try and like apply to the Speed Force, I think. The formula for speed and time. And he says, you're the answer, Barry. And then he says that thing, my daughter, Barry, whatever you do, please don't let it hurt my daughter. But then Johnny grabs Barry, which causes him to be disintegrated. And Max, Barry says to Max, like, don't touch me, I'll kill you. And Max says, it's not you, he starts to say Professor. And then we see Professor Zoom, aka Reverse Flash, show up, and he's got that lightning rod weapon that we saw that killed the forensic scientist at the beginning. And he says, I've shifted you into reverse. And that is the first half of this book.
And before I get into this, I just want to say that I don't totally understand how the Speed Force works.
Yeah.
So,
well, it is very like wibbly wobbly, timey wimey, just kind of like, random.
For sure. So basically, it opens up with kind of a whole little recap on who Reverse Flash is.
Right.
Basically saying he's Barry's version of the Joker, and then they start fighting, and then we cut back to Fallville with the rest of the Justice League and some of the Flash family as well. And at this point, we see Bart, Wally, and Jay. They all decide to go into the Speed Force and help Flash as well. And then Flash is there, and we also see his family, his children, like you mentioned. There's Irie and Jay. They're with Iris. No, not Iris. It's Wally's
Linda.
Yes, Linda. They're with Linda, and their powers start messing up. No, that's later. We Irie, they get into an argument.
Spoilers. No.
Oh yeah. Spoilers for the later in the podcast. They get into an argument, and then Irie runs away, and she sees Reverse Flashes downstairs. And and then they're running, and this is the part where Jessie Quick, I'm going to call her Jessie Quick because that's how I know her, even though technically she's going by Liberty Bell or whatever. She gets the formula, but she doesn't really know what it means. Right. And then they're still running, and they get like flashes of the past and stuff. And then this moment over here is Linda and Jay are looking for Irie, and they run into her and Reverse Flash downstairs. And he's basically talking about how like their powers are messing up, and he's going to kind of fix it, but then he's also going to kill him because like
he said their connection to the Speed Force is tangled, and he's going to untangle it and strangle them with it or something.
Right, exactly. And basically, because they're children, and so the Speed Force is kind of like in their genetics, like whereas like with the other ones they were struck by lightning or chemicals or whatever. Boy, this is like a biological thing, so their connection is different than the others. And then so I had a question about Jay Garrick. He kind of just says zoom out of nowhere. I'm assuming that means something, or
because that's. Like they seem to very interchangeably use Reverse Flash and like Zoom, like because he was originally called Professor Zoom for years, and that's kind of how he's referred to most of the time. Even though I think he's more commonly known as Reverse Flash nowadays. So he's he's just referring to Reverse Flash.
Got you. Okay, so then they start battling, and they kind of go through the parade and everything. So I decided to take this panel, and I made a meme out of it. Hey, Jared Garrick, what's your favorite communications technology company that's headquartered in San Jose, California?
Zoom.
Anyways, so they're battling. Jay Garrick and Reverse Flash are battling, and so I never thought about it this way, but Reverse Flash brings up this point how like Jay Garrick has like this aura around him, so that when he runs fast, the friction doesn't like melt him, and it kind of makes sense. But then he somehow Reverse Flash kind of gets rid of the aura, and so he catches on fire. But then
that's true for like all the people connected to the Speed Force.
It makes a lot of sense now that it's mentioned. I just never even really thought about it. But like, I mean, they're going that fast, like it makes sense.
When they like grab somebody to save them, like the aura kind of spreads to them too, so they don't like get their neck snapped or something.
Right. But then Bart quickly puts him out. Puts out the flames, and then they start fighting, and Reverse Flash quickly gets the upper hand against Bart, but then he's rescued by his mentor, Max Mercury. Is that his name?
Yeah.
Okay. And then like Bart's like super happy to see him, and then they all this issue ends with them kind of all running at Reverse Flash, and there's kind of a brief panel where Jessie figures out the formula, which is going to be important later. This issue begins with two flashbacks, one with Barry and his mom talking about how their car breaks down on the side of the road and no one stops to help them. And then there's one where he's at the forensics place before he turns into the Flash, but he's talking about how like he doesn't do coffee, but he's also like really dedicated to his work, and he's always late and stuff like that. And then we pick it back up in the present where we left off. Jay throws his hat at Professor Zoom. Reverse Flash. I don't know why I called it Professor Zoom. But then he like catches it and then like throws it back. And then Max and Bart have a little moment together. He's like, I read everything in the San Francisco library in 5 minutes, and he's like, I didn't like any of it though. And then like Reverse Flash does this like sonic snap thing, and it kind of sends a shockwave through them, and then they're able to, I think I might have left out a panel here, but they're able to basically get him off of his feet, and then they're somehow able to, Jay Garrick does this like, I think something with his hat. I don't remember, I don't have the exact panel, but he's able to like do some pretty good damage to Reverse Flash.
Yeah, he like throws in the air or something and like I don't know, he like smacks it and it like makes like a sonic wave.
Yeah.
And they're all able to like run away, but since Reverse Flash is in the air, he just gets like blown.
Right, because he's
blown
away.
Can't
run, he's not touching the ground. Yeah. And then it was that sort of Speed Force seizure thing that was happening earlier with the other speedsters happening with the kids. And then like Irie gets like pretty badly hurt, and she like loses consciousness for a bit.
Well, yeah, what happens is, like, I guess they figure out that because they're twins, they like share a connection to the Speed Force.
Right.
So Irie like touches Jay and just like takes the full brunt of the connection, I think, is the idea.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. And so she loses consciousness, and then Liberty Bell shows up, and she's like, she figured out the formula from her dad, and so she's able to use it to help bring Irie back to consciousness, I guess. And at this point, because she took the brunt of the Speed Force, Jay doesn't have any powers anymore. And I guess this was the bit with the hat. I don't know how it ended up over here, but there's those panels.
Oh yeah, there we go.
Yeah. And then they show up. Jesse Quick and Liberty, and not Liberty Bell. Jesse Quick is Liberty Bell. And Irie show up, and they get a couple good licks in with Reverse Flash. Then they all kind of start running at him, and I don't know if I have that panel here either, but she's going by Impulse now. And there's another panel of them all running together.
Wally teaches them how to like use the Speed Force to like change their costumes, basically.
Exactly. So that's how you can tell the difference between the two Flashes.
Which I'm pretty sure is more similar to Wally's suit in like the 90s. He had like a darker suit with like that different cowl and everything.
So she's going by Impulse now because Bart is Kid Flash and Wally is the Flash, so then they'll kind of go through different names and stuff. And at this point, Reverse Flash gets Barry alone for a bit, and he's basically talking about how, like, oh, remember that one time you fell down and you broke your arm? Well, that was me who pushed you over. And then there's other times where he's like, yeah, I also killed your dog, and I also did this and this and this. And then there's this one panel where he's like, everything that bad that ever happened to you in your whole life was me. And then there's kind of this pause, and Barry's like, wait, you killed my mom? And then it's like, and he's like, yeah, I killed your mom. And I really like it how he didn't come out and say it at first. It was just kind of implied, and then he kind of has Barry like to figure it out on his own. I like that's interesting.
That's cool.
And then there's a flashback to the mom's murder, and then that's the part I murdered your mother, Barry. And then there's a flashback to, this is after the court hearing, but before the first date.
Right.
While Iris goes into a tailor, and she's going to buy the bow tie, and Reverse Flash basically says, I can't kill you because without you I don't exist, but I can kind of kill everyone around you to make your life as miserable as possible.
And it was kind of mentioned earlier that like the speedsters can only get out of the Speed Force if they have a quote unquote lightning rod, which is like for pretty much all of them it's a significant other. Like for Barry's Iris, Jay it's Joan and everything, but I guess Max Mercury is the only one that doesn't have one.
Okay, so the final issue starts, and so basically they're trying to run back because there's a line where Reverse Flash says he's able to do things with the Speed Force that Barry can't even really comprehend, and so he's able to run back in time, which is mentioned that only Barry was able to do that with the cosmic treadmill.
Right.
And so Barry and Wally, they're chasing him, and they're kind of barely trying to keep up, and they're going through time. And it keeps flashing to that night with the bow tie, and they're chasing, and like we see that right here he has that same lightning rod thing that he's going to stab her with, but then they're able to stop him in the nick of time, and it's still flying towards her. It's still flying towards her, and it also at the same time, this was during the same lightning storm of Barry got his powers, and so it flashes to that as well. But they're fighting through the Speed Force, but the thing is still flying towards her because they're just moving so fast. And then they're able to trap Reverse Flash in the same containment thing that Barry was in when he had the Black Flash thing. And they lock him in there, and then they kind of turn it on, and like all the energy just kind of vaporizes him pretty much. And the lightning rod just barely misses Iris, and she picks it up, and then Flash goes to the parade, and he's basically like, yeah, this is great. And then we have a couple of those panels which it's kind of at the end of most superhero stories where there's other villains that are like, oh, I'm plotting now.
Right.
Yeah. We
It's
have
basically end credit scenes.
Exactly. There's one with Hunter Zolomon. There's one with the gorillas, and apparently Abracadabra survived whatever happened to him, although we don't really know what that was to begin with.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and then Barry finally puts the box away with his mom's case because he's like, "Yeah, I figured out who did it, and it's time to move on." And then he realizes that because he was gone for so long, there's a bunch of other cold cases that are unsolved. And then in the present day, because we see that because the past changes, so Iris still has the lightning rod from that whole thing.
Oh, right.
And Barry's like, yeah, I'm going to try to slow down and just enjoy the moment because no matter how fast I go, time still moves forward. And then there's this scene with Oliver Queen eating some cake. Assuming it's it's in Washington D.C. It's not in the Watchtower. And then Barry's like, yeah, I'm late, but I'm also Flash. So
yeah, right. But also Flash. Yeah, right.
Yeah. And that is the end of this story.
Yeah. So, yeah, there was a lot of running in this story.
Oh, yeah.
What did you think about
the Speed Force? Yeah, I really liked it. I'm not, like I mentioned, I don't know a whole lot about the Speed Force. I don't know.
Yeah.
Flash is one of those characters I haven't read a whole lot about anyway. But I really like this story.
Yeah. It's like you just said, you hadn't read it before. Yeah, I read this like probably like 7 or 8 years ago. I remember really enjoying it because it's kind of got like everything in it. Like it's very like flashy, you know. Like I mean, like it's like pretty much all the major Flash characters are in it, and it's like has a few pretty iconic shots in it. And then there's also the really like this is the first time that it was revealed that Reverse Flash killed his mom. And that's become like a huge like staple of the character ever since then.
Right.
Because of Flashpoint and then even like the Flash series and everything. Yeah. And I'm not sure like what they're gonna do in the movie, but yeah, so I just really enjoy that. I really liked all the art in it. Like something I really like about pretty much all Flash comics is just like the colorful nature of everything. Like, you know, the cool suits and, you know, it's all like the Speed Force stuff, like lends a lot of color to everything. It's pretty interesting. I think Reverse Flash is one of my favorite villains.
Yeah.
He's just really interesting. He's like just a total psycho, but it's just kind of crazy how like powerful he is and how much how obsessed he is with Barry to the point where he just like spends all this time like just trying to ruin his life for no real reason. He's just insane. So yeah, I thought that was cool. And like this story does kind of tie in a lot with Flashpoint. It's almost kind of a lead in into Flashpoint, which we are going to be talking about next week. But that is pretty much our coverage. I don't think I really have any other thoughts on this. I really like it, and it's kind of an iconic Flash story. I think if you're a Flash fan, I'd definitely check it out. Even though
if you don't know a whole lot about the Flash, this is a good jumping out point as well.
That too, because I think when I read that, I hadn't really read many Flash comics. I wasn't really aware. Like I was aware that Wally was the Flash for most of like the 90s, 2000s, and I never really knew why. But this book kind of like told me why. It's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Though I think my only really real criticism with this is that it doesn't really explain how Reverse Flash is even alive and back. It's just sort of like, oh, and like that beginning frame, I guess, is him like recreating his powers or something, but it's just really like confusing. It's never really told how he's back. One big thing we didn't mention in this, one big thing this story does is it reveals that the Speed Force is basically created by Barry. Like when that accident happened to Barry, he kind of like created the Speed Force, and the more he runs, like the more like he basically generates the Speed Force from him. And Reverse Flash has like a reverse Speed Force that like he created, kind of like a negative Speed Force, which he generates when he runs, and that's how he was able to like corrupt Barry, basically. Like that red lightning and stuff that made him Black Flash was like the negative Speed Force, and that was kind of his whole plan, was to use the negative Speed Force to corrupt Barry basically. And so I thought that was a pretty interesting aspect to the story too, and it was like the first time like that concept even was brought to light. So I thought that was all pretty cool. Definitely check this story out if you're interested at all in the Flash. now to close out the show, let's do our cultured picks, where we basically just talk about some single issues that we've read recently that we thought were pretty noteworthy. So my issue this week is actually quite a bit of an older issue. It's Spectacular Spider-Man 108. It's from 1985, but I picked it up pretty recently.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was kind of cool because not only is it an older comics, like obviously this is during the Black Suits phase,
right?
Before he knew it was a symbiote and everything, but also Matt Murdock Daredevil's in it, which I thought was kind of cool. And there's this weird dude called Sin Eater in it, and he's basically just some dude with a shotgun that's going around killing people that he deems like evil, basically, or sinners. Like I think he kills a corrupt judge and stuff like that. But it's just kind of cool. I haven't read an old Spider-Man comic in a while, and I always love Daredevil and Spider-Man crossovers. So that's fun. I don't think I really owned any Spider-Man comics with him in the black suit before, so that's kind of fun. Yeah. But and yeah, you can tell how old it is by the comic's only 65 cents.
Right.
Oh
right.
gosh. But yeah,
nice,
what's your issue?
I picked up a much newer issue.
Yeah.
It is the Titans #1, and this is basically leads right out after Dark Crisis. And
right.
What I really like about this is it definitely feels like, because the Titans are now like the main team of the DCU.
Right.
And it really feels like a lot of things are going to be happening in this series. Like there's a lot of setup in this book that I'm really excited for. And one thing that's really interesting is that it kind of hints at a conflict in the future with the Titans and the Suicide Squad, which sounds really cool because they haven't really interacted as much in the past. And so, yeah, that sounds really cool. And my only thing is that I wish it was a more original lineup, because this is pretty much like the pretty what most people think of when they hear the Titans.
Yeah.
So I would have preferred like a little bit different, maybe like a John Kent or like Steele in there or something like that.
Yes, something a little more interesting. Maybe they'll add them going forward.
Yeah, hopefully they'll add new members later on.
Well, yeah, because the Justice League disbanded like at the end of Dark Crisis, right?
Right.
Which by the way, like our first couple episodes are on Dark Crisis, so check those out if you want to know more about that. But I do like it about this lineup. I do like that Wally is still Flash.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what else they would do because it wouldn't make sense for him to be Kid Flash. He's like 30, but still, I am glad that he's still Flash. But yeah, I mean, I do love all these characters,
for sure.
But I would like them to, kind of expand more, or maybe even just like bring in some other, like you said, John Kent, or even more characters from like even like the Young Justice lineup, like Superboy. I don't know what Miss Martian is doing at this point in the continuity, but maybe some characters like that would be interesting. But yeah, that seems cool. I kind of forgot that this was coming out this month, so I'll definitely have to pick it up too. And it's written by Joshua Williamson, right?
I believe it's,
or is it not?
It's the same. I don't remember his name. It's the same guy who's doing the current Nightwing run. I don't remember his name.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Because I was gonna say, because I'm pretty sure Joshua Williamson is doing like all the Superman stuff right now. Like, he's doing John Kent and the current Superman run, and I think something else too. And the new Green Lantern or Green Arrow.
Yeah.
So he's doing a lot. So it's kind of no, it's something Taylor. What's his name?
Yeah, Tom Taylor. Yeah,
Tom Taylor. Okay, yeah, I was gonna say that'd be a lot for him, that one guy to do. All right, well, that is our episode for this week. Thank you so much for joining us. Like we said, be sure to tune in next week where we're going to be covering a Flashpoint, which I feel like is going to be a really important story to really be familiar with for the Flash movie. So definitely don't miss that episode next Friday.
Yep.
But if you would like to support us, you can check us out on patreon.com/theculturednerd. And if you would like to support me and Luke in particular, you can check out our show's tier on the Patreon page. Thank you to all of our current Patreon supporters: Wesley H., Mitch S., Connor Y., Anna M., Oscar B., Craig L., and Salib K. We have been your hosts, Michael Malillo and Luke S. Our logo and visual assets were designed by Jose Navarro, and our intro was designed by myself.
Yep.
Thank you again for joining us. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and leave a comment what you thought of this issue or this story that we covered.
Yeah.
And if you would like to check out the Cultured Nerd on social media, you can scan the QR code on the bottom left. And lastly, but not leastly, you can check out Casual Experts, me and Luke's brand. We have our own podcast and YouTube channel, social media, all that stuff. You can check that out by scanning the QR code on the bottom right. Yep. Until next time, everybody.
Peace out.